This crazy horse, something else I wanted to talk to you about. I'm mic'd up now, so hopefully you can hear me better. So my friend Alesh asked me, you know, these riots in Thailand, aren't they worried about the people being out of work, not paying their taxes, not having any money to pay taxes? And you know, it's the same in the US. You're irrelevant. The government doesn't run off your tax dollars. I looked it up. There's like in the US, a $6.6 trillion spent by the US government in 2020. Something like 1.3 trillion brought in taxes from individual taxpayers, and then payroll taxes like another trillion. And corporate taxes are really small, like 200 and something billion. It's just a fraction of that. Corporations are not taxed at the level you are taxed. So, you know, companies are paying the payroll tax. Probably some of that comes out of your pay as well, plus Social Security and the rest of it, they charge you, they take it out of your pay. But if the government's paying out 6.6 trillion and only 1.3, one-fifth, one-sixth of that, one-fifth, let's say, that the government is spending every year, one-fifth comes from your tax money. Even collectively as a whole, the taxpayers are not that important to the US government. They're getting their funding from the Fed. They're borrowing money like there's no tomorrow. In fact, the entire corporate tax revenue, taxes coming in from corporations, their profits, doesn't even cover, it doesn't even come close to covering the interest that we're paying on our debt every year. So we're borrowing money to pay for that interest. And your tax dollars are one-fifth of what we're paying out as a government. So you're not important. And as an individual taxpayer, if you're making small salary and paying small taxes, you're totally irrelevant. The government doesn't need you to function. It doesn't need your money. It doesn't need your taxes. And you know, there's property taxes and the rest of it. And the middle class, the upper middle class, is paying a lot of that. The working class is paying all their, one-third of their income or one-quarter of their income to the US government, but it just goes down a rat hole. They're not using that money. And it's the same in every country now. I'm sure they're spending that money, but then they're spending 5 times that they get from other sources. They get from loans, they get from the Fed, they get from corporations in the form of payroll tax and corporate taxes. So you as a taxpayer, you're not that important. You know, Alesh is asking me, like, you know, what if the people don't work for a year and a half like we have right now? What if they can't pay taxes? What if they are not supporting the government? The government doesn't give a damn. The government doesn't run on your money. It doesn't need you. That's obvious. That's apparent. You're just a serf. You're a slave to them. You're a working class serf who might make a pittance of salary, and of course, a big portion of the working class in this country is on welfare. So the government is actually paying these people housing, welfare, food stamps, etc. I don't know what the numbers are. I don't know what the percentage is. I don't know what the amounts are. But you're more of an expense. If you're working class, if you're formerly working class who's now unemployed, you're an expense to the government. They throw you $1,200 in the last year and a half for COVID. But you're not a source of revenue for the US government or for the government in Thailand or anywhere else. You're an expense. You're a liability. You're not revenue. So your power is based on that, is nil. You have no say in the government. The government is not supported by you. Politicians are not elected by you. They're elected by super PACs, donations from large corporations and rich people who they then meet with, and lobbyists meet with these politicians and tell them what they want. They write the bills for them, and then the legislators put those bills through to serve the corporations. If you don't know this, living in this day and age where there's so much information available on the web, you need to go find out. You're not supporting the government. You're not your income tax is not providing the government with funds. Like, you're going to cut them off if you don't get what you want, if you don't have a job, if you don't work. You're just an expense. The rich guys, owns shares in these corporations, big pharma, car companies, airlines, whatever it is. All this production now is done overseas. If you're living in the US, you can't get very many jobs, working jobs. Auto workers, everybody's out of work, steel workers. These towns are drying up that were next to these factories. The guys that own the corporations are still making money because the cars are made in Mexico, they're made in China, they're made in Canada. And so they're still selling to the people who can buy on credit, of course, because they have no money. These enormous loans at 15% for 7 years. So you're actually paying double for the car than what you think you're paying for it because of the amount of interest you're paying. Same with a house. You know, if you get a 30-year mortgage and actually pay that off, you're actually paying double for the house. And you know, they know what they're doing to take all your money up front. I mean, we just bought a house in Florida. When we got pre-approved for the house, they told us the closing costs would be $3,000 to $4,000. It ended up being over $10,000. So when we came down to the last couple of days of the closing, they sent me a letter that said, oh yeah, we had to change your closing costs. What am I gonna do? Say no? I'm gonna close in 2 days. The seller's been waiting and waiting after all these delays that the mortgage company kept demanding. So instead of a 1 month closing, it's turned into 2 months. 2 days before the closing, they say they have to change my closing costs. What am I gonna do? Say no and go find another mortgage and go through that whole process for 2 more months? I'm gonna lose that house, go to buy another house, they're gonna do it to me all over again. You know, every company is gonna do the same thing. You know, you go to buy a car at a dealership, they advertise one price on the web, they say the car is $15,000, and you go in there and you find out there's a $1,000 document fee. So the car is not $15,000, it's $16,000. And they're not gonna budge on that, no matter how much you complain. And most people don't even notice it. They just sign the contract, happy to get the car and get out of the dealership with their skin still intact. So they tack on all these fees at the end, and you can either walk away and go to another dealer and pay the other dealer the same fee. They're all doing it. It's perfectly legal. So you have to be aware of what they're doing. They're tricking you, bringing you in at this advertised price that's not the real price, because then they add in other fees. Destination fee, delivery fee, warranties, document fee, all a bunch of bullshit. So what they're advertising at $15,000 is actually $17,500. And you don't know that till you get down to sign the paperwork and you've already test driven the car and you've got your heart set on it. And then, you know, what are you gonna do? Go give up that car and go start looking again and go find somewhere else, another dealer that's gonna do the same thing to you? So you have to be aware of what's going on here. You're a pawn in this game, and the big guys have figured out the ways to steal your money. They tax you, they kick you out of work, they lay you off when they don't need you. You have no rights. You're not supporting the government. You're not funding the government. You're just, you know, you're a burden on the government. It's just something I wanted to explain. I'd like to hear in the comments what you think. This is Crazy Horse.